This is Small Business Big World, our weekly podcast prepared by the team at Paper Trails. Owning and running a small business is hard. Each week, we'll dive into the challenges, headaches, trends, fun, and excitement of running a small business. After all, small businesses are the heartbeat of America, and our team is here to keep them beating. Welcome to Small Business Big World, our weekly podcast where we talk about all the exciting things that we deal with in running and managing a small business. Today, my guest is Ashley Winslow with Bangor Savings. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Excellent. Today, we're going to talk about networking in small businesses and how to be a networking pro, right? Before we do that, I always like to remind everybody, like, follow, share, rate, review, subscribe. We are across the internet. Anywhere you want to be watching or listening, we are there. Be sure to like, follow, rate, review, subscribe. I'm sure I forgot one. John always yells at me for forgetting one, but we got that one. So, and certainly if there is any questions you have for us or any of our guests, you certainly can email podcast@papertrails.com and we will get those questions answered. So, Ashley, you are a networking wizard, right? So what do you think networking is for small businesses? What does that generally look like and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, the way that I look at networking is like you and I both have physical locations and we have a certain amount of employees. The way that I've always seen networking is that's growing your almost like employee base. So it's growing the people that are out there, spreading the word, looking for opportunities for you and vice versa. And just it's really building that group of, highly professional, highly motivated, really great people to be around.
That's great. So, we always look for folks that complement our business, right? That our clients are also working with those types of people, right? So what does that look like for you? Like, who are those kind of folks that you kind of look to work with mostly?
Yeah, I mean, in my networking group in particular, we have everything from, we have commercial cleaning, we have divorce attorneys, we have people that spray for ticks and mosquitoes, we have, nurses, we have quite literally everything that you can think of. And it's amazing how, many connections you can find for people, even though they're so far outside of your industry. What I always try to tell, my team and other networkers is the most important thing is to be the type of person that you would want to send your best customer to. So that's what I try to be for my networkers. If I have somebody, say I have my top customer that I'm sitting with and they're looking for a divorce attorney, unfortunately, then I will want to be extremely confident in because I am giving my, advice.
Sure, your recommendation, yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the people that we try to surround ourselves with in our networking group. So far it's been really great.
So you're in a networking group, right? There's a lot of different networking groups like BNI, but you're in a different one, right?
Yeah, I'm in several. I've been networking professionally for about 9 years. I did start my own networking group in Sanford Springvale about a year and a half ago to this point. It's called TBD Connections. It's part of a greater group of connection groups. They're all called TBD. We have chapters from Brunswick all the way to actually Florida. We have a couple chapters over there. But we are the newest chapter, and I was the vice president of the local Kennebunk chapter for about 5 years until I thought, there seemed to be a really large need for that networking space down, in the Sanford, Springvale, all those areas down there just didn't really have any Waterboro. So I was like, why not just start one? So we put a couple, it was this grassroots as, putting up a post in the local community board on Facebook and saying we're going to try to start a networking group. We'll be here at 9:00 on this day. And to our surprise and excitement, we had 17 people walk through the door that day.
That's awesome.
The good
For a first day, that's enough.
Yeah. And it's grown from them. And it's just been, the need is huge.
So what is that format? So that's a more formal networking group, right? What does that look like on a weekly or monthly basis? How do you guys weight that work?
So this particular group meets weekly, and then annually we have a large social event, which all the other chapters come to. We just had ours a couple weeks ago, actually, for the Sanford chapter. We got some great networking in, and we actually raised over $600 for a local nonprofit, which is really exciting.
Nice. So is there a cadence that goes along with that? Where you guys, I think you said you meet weekly, right? Mm-hmm. So what does that weekly meeting look like? And I think that's a big investment for a lot of people is a weekly thing, but explain how it all works.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we hear a lot is, it's, I don't have the time, or I did go and I didn't get anything out of it. But really networking is extremely largely like you get out what you put in. And our particular networking group doesn't have any attendance requirements. There are some that, you have to go there every week. And if you miss a week, you have to find a substitute. We don't have those policies in place, although those are great policies. We kind of leave it up to exactly that. So the more you put in, the more you get out, and that's on you. So we have people that show up, once every 6 months, and they probably get a deal from us once every 6 months. We have people that come once a week, and they yield really great results from that. But really what that looks like is, during those weekly meetings, you only have 45 seconds to talk about yourself and what you do. And I don't think any of us can really describe fully what we do in 45 seconds. We all have our great elevator pitches, but it's almost like a second full-time job. So you need to take the time. What we've found is, and have those one-on-ones with people and have those ongoing communications. So you have your weekly meeting where you get in the room and you meet people. But then the real networking, I always say the most important part of the networking group is the 15 minutes before the meeting and the 15 minutes after the meeting, because that's when you get to sit down and people talk about your day, show them who you are as a person, and really, really build that trust. So you're not just, the seventh mortgage loan officer sitting at the table, and maybe they'll pick your card and maybe they won't.
Right. Yeah. I think, so one of those things about the formal networking groups, how do you engage with the folks that aren't necessarily in your traditional network, right? So, if you have this mosquito and tick guy, right, who largely is maybe dealing with more consumer-based clients, not necessarily business clients, who might be your ideal client, how do you get leads to them and from them? How have you found that working?
Yeah. So, we've, as a group in the past year, we've passed over 150 referrals to one another. And our industries are so widely separated, but we found great success in things as simple as I mentioned earlier, like just those community boards on Facebook. If you see people that are, looking for someone to come spray my lawn, you have 8 of us sitting here and saying, this guy is the best. He's wonderful. He's great. I've known him for a year. That's kind of how we've been.
So that's that's a totally interesting way of looking at it, because I would definitely say that happens all the time, right? Especially in this day and age, we're all in these Facebook groups where somebody's looking for somebody to do something, right? And of course, there's a million recommendations, and sometimes there's some non-recommendations and things like that. But I never really thought about the networking in terms of the power of, if 10 people recommend the same person, that's probably going to drive that cold. I consider that a cold lead, I guess, but that's going to drive that cold lead to that provider, right? It's kind of an interesting way of thinking about networking. It might not be someone that's already in your network. It's totally blind, right? Yeah. Which I guess, you said earlier that you want to be, the person that you'd refer your best client to, right? And so when we make referrals with our client base, I know there's people that I just know are going to work better with some people than not, right?
Absolutely.
So that whole concept kind of scares me, because now I'm referring blind to somebody, and gosh, maybe that's a client that they're never going to want, right? Yeah. I guess you don't know that, which is a little scary to me, right?
Yeah, you just have to have, what we do is we just have a great amount of faith in the people that we network with. So these are people that, I would never go to a networking group and the very first time someone comes in, be like, great, I'm going to refer you to all my friends and family and everyone I see online. It's really those people, again, that they get out what they put in, and I meet them week after week after week after week, and I get to the point where I do feel comfortable saying, I think that you are a great property manager in the area, and
sure, yeah,
working with you.
Yeah, interesting. What are some of the do's and don'ts that you've found in this kind of formal networking relationship? What are the things that have worked really well and the things that have, really tanked really bad?
Yeah, in the beginning, I found, exactly to my point earlier, if you show up and you give your 45 seconds and you leave, that's not networking. And you sit there and you're that person, and we hear it all the time. They're I went to 6 meetings and I didn't get anything out of it. It's yes, you and 6 other, realtors did, and none of them got anything out of it, because except for the one that took the time to meet everybody, to talk about themselves. That's kind of the main difference. But as far as the do's and don'ts, I got a really good piece of advice when I first started networking. I was lucky enough to have some amazing mentors, and one of them said, the worst thing you could do is be an inch deep and a mile wide. So if you're that person that just, you're at every after hours, you're at every networking group, you're everywhere under the sun, and you're just here's my card, here's my card, here's my card. You have, you can have all these connections, but they're not meaningful. They're an inch deep. You know what I mean? So it's better to have a small group of 5, 6 people that you've really, really built that connection with, that you email on a weekly basis, that you go to lunch with once a month, that you are 100% confident that every time they come across an opportunity, it's coming your way.
Right. That's interesting. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask is, how do you manage, okay, so you have your formal networking group, but how are you managing your, the informal things, the after hours, this week is one of those weeks. I literally have tonight, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, I have, stuff every night, fundraiser, networking event. I don't even remember what's happening Wednesday, but I have something Wednesday night, which is business related. And I think, so how are you managing those kind of connections in the more informal, not your formal networking group?
Yeah, I mean, the best advice that I've received and I've given to people is the networking should be one of your top priorities each day. Because if you're doing it right, that hour that you're spending from 5 to 6 p.m., which no one really wants to do, but if you make the most out of that hour, it's going to pay back like the same amount as if you sat in your office and did 10 days of work. Because you have so many more people that you're connecting with. You're not going to have that many people walk through the door of your business. So I always just, it's on my calendar, it's on a priority. I'm going to be there unless there's some catastrophic reason that I can't. And then just, making the time for it. And when you're there, being fully present. So, you go to some networking groups and there's people that'll come for 5 minutes and there's people that'll, like go and stay at the bar for the most of the time. But it's really going in there, committing to yourself. I'm going to have, 3 really, really deep conversations with people about getting to know what they do, leave with their card, leave with a follow-up meeting. And just really making it a priority.
So I consider myself an extroverted person and a pretty connected person in the community. But even when I go to after hours, I feel like I gravitate to the same people, right? Yeah. The same group, the people I know already, the whatever. But what have you found that helps you kind of reach out to cold to people at those events, right? Have you done anything? What do you do to psych yourself up for that, right?
Yeah. No, I do. I try to do, and I've trained a lot of people in networking as well, and I always encourage people to do their due diligence. So if you're invited to a networking group, what I do is I'll go on, if you get like an Outlook invite and there's like the people that are going, I'll take the time to pick 3 and research them and find them at the meeting and commit to myself that I'm going to go introduce myself to this person. I'll try to ask people that know them if they can give me a warm introduction. Same thing if you get like the Facebook event invite, see who's going and kind of just pick 3 people you want to meet.
That's actually really good advice. I think, just as you're preparing for a prospect, I think that's the same kind of thing, right? Just preparing to meet a new networking partner. That's kind of a neat thought. So what if things aren't working, right? How do you rejigger yourself if, you talked about a lot of things, set good goals, challenge yourself, do your research. But what if things aren't aren't working, right? Gosh, I'm talking to people that I really want to be in front of and it's not working, right? No, I'm not getting any business out of it, or vice versa. I'm not able to find anything to send to them, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, there's a catchphrase in networking that says, don't go to these groups trying to like pin the tail on the donkey. So you need to have your goals, but also like be flexible. And if things aren't working, that's a really good opportunity to step back. And I think what a lot of people fall into is like, networking is not working for me. It's just not for me. And that's not true. It's kind of that you need to take the step back and reevaluate like what you're doing. And in that time, I mean, that's happened to me. The first networking group I went to, I was 23 years old and I walked in and I had no idea what I was doing. But a really good thing is to find the people in the room that seem really well connected and seem confident and be, open and honest enough to go up to them and be like, I need like your advice. Could we schedule a meeting and you kind of tell me like your tips of the trade? And I've never, ever, ever met someone that's like, no, like those are my secrets. Really good networkers love sharing tips on really good networking.
I think that's a good point is, even within your own industry, for the most part, I think we're very fortunate where we are. Most people are willing to share and give their advice and teach. I think that's really, I truly believe that a rising tide floats all boats. I think as the community is doing better, I'm doing better, my business is doing better, my employees doing better, everything's, about that. And I think, if we have peers, I have competitors, right? We're competitors to some extent, right? I'm not afraid of that, right? In essence, I think, for us, it's great that we are close because if the shit hits the fan, maybe you'll be there to help me, right? Or I'll be there to help you or something, all of our competitors locally, we know I've got them in my cell phone. I could text them, at 9 o'clock at night saying, God, I really need help with this, right? And I think that's the same thing, in your industry. There are 15 banks in a 1 mile stretch. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure all the branch managers, right? And, and it's the same thing. It's being there to help each other and support each other. And maybe, just maybe, right? this bank may not be the right, this client may not be right for this bank. And they may say, gosh, we're going to send this to Ashley because I know she can handle it, right?
Mm-hmm.
That happens.
Absolutely.
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
I try not to send those nasty clients to make them. I don't want to recommend people if I know the client's not going to be a right fit for them. But I think that's really important. Like you said, is people usually will take some time to say, hey, what's out there and how can you help me? And I think most people are willing to do that. But so that kind of goes on to the next thing. Like, what about the one-on-ones? How do you get someone to say, hey, listen, you've gone up to a networking event or whatever, can I get coffee? What are you looking to usually get out of those? What are you looking to provide in those, I guess?
Yeah. Honestly, in the advice that I've given others as well is in the first meeting, I try to not talk business out. My goal is to leave and them literally knowing like where I work and what I do, but that's about it. As far as I'm not sitting there being like, we have the best rates and you could do this and we can, my goal is for them to get to know me because there are 100 other bankers out there that are having these same meetings with them that are sitting in product, dumping on them. Whereas if you take the hour and you find commonalities like, oh, I love to ski. I have 2 kids in the school district. I have, I love my cat. Like all those sorts of things, I feel like that's when the true connections start to build. And to your earlier point of how do you blindly recommend someone, those are really great things to build off of too. So if I run into someone that and their personality just reminds me, they would work so well with Lisa. You know what I mean? Lisa also has a house in the mountain. They have so much in common. So it's really taking that hour, I feel like, to try to share more about you and much more importantly, like them. So always let them lead the conversation. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family. Like what got you into this industry? Where are your passions? That's usually how the one-to-ones look like.
So once you get your first one-to-one, right?
Mm-hmm.
You talked about setting goals for yourself in networking events, but do you kind of set goals for each other in subsequent meetings, right? So we're going to take that out of our big group and maybe we're going to meet once a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Can we say, hey, listen, I want to find a person a month to send to you, or I want you to spend. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people that will end one-to-ones with like a solid, like I had one banker that was in networking and that was like his thing. He like at the end every time was like, I have committed that I'm going to send him 3 deals. And he did it because he had those goals for himself and that worked really, really well for them. Everybody does, their commitments in a different way. Like my main thing is I just try to stay relevant in their world. So if you go and you have this really, really great one-to-one and then that's it for the next year, you wasted all that time and you wasted their time. It's really committing to looking out for opportunities for them. It's keeping that communication open when you have, like a great rate or something that popped up or, a special through payroll. It's communicating that with them. And really just staying in the loop on their lives. So, follow their LinkedIn. If they get a promotion, write them a card, congratulate them, bring them out to lunch. Just keep those connections going, just like you would a friend.
Sure. And certainly, again, you kind of get out of it what you put into it, right? And I think that's a real thing is, gosh, don't just leave that meeting and not do anything, right? Mm-hmm. Follow up. I mean, I had coffee with someone Friday morning and, my wheels are turning about, okay, how do I stay engaged with him? He's a great person to know, very well connected, maybe not necessarily going to send me some business, but I think you're right. Okay, he was in Main Biz a few weeks ago, and that's how I kind of got connected. And hey, congratulations on your award, blah blah blah. I'd love to get together with you, and that's kind of spurred coffee, and who knows from there, right? Yeah. But I think that's on me to try to figure out where to next. So that's good advice for sure. So you are in a very saturated industry, right?
Yeah.
How do you set yourself apart from all of the other bankers out there that are literally rate shopping, right? I mean, they're, gosh, we have a mortgage promotion, we have a HELOC promotion or whatever. How are you setting yourself apart with your networking partners?
Yeah, we have a community that's just absolutely chock full of talent, especially in the financial world. There's so many, we have local banks, we have large banks. There's an immense amount of talent in this industry. And to your earlier point, I welcome the competition in the way that they are, in a lot of the cases, my top referral sources. I look out for, like you had mentioned, if there's a new branch manager at a local bank, I'm going to lunch with them that week. Just kind of keep those lines of communication open, and the way that you complement each other. So you don't want me versus them. It's kind of how can we cohesively, make sure that everybody's needs are met. I think one thing that does make people stand out is trustworthiness responsiveness, you know what I mean? And then like punctuality. So if I'm at a networking group and someone comes in 15 minutes late and they haven't been there for 3 weeks, and that might not be my first choice of someone to send to, opposed to the person that came 15 minutes early and took the time to talk to me and shared a little about their lives with me. So I think standing out is just doing those things that make you, as I mentioned earlier, the person that they feel the most comfortable sending their top customer to, and not worrying about it a bit.
That's really good. What's the one thing that you think people listening today should take away in terms of networking? If you do nothing else, what's the one thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best free advertisement out there. And I've said it a million times, you get out what you put in. And if it's something that people have wanted to try in the past, I say just do it. Like I said, my first networking group, I didn't even get invited to. I just showed up and I had no idea what I was doing. And I was welcomed so big with open arms, and it was so wonderful. And honestly, I'm sure you can say the same, but I feel like the people that I've met through my business networking have become like some of the closest people in my life, which is crazy. I mean, they've grown into be my professional references. They are the first people to, you know what I mean, celebrate a promotion, or like when I had my second child, like they threw me a baby shower. Like it was just, they really do become like really, really close in so many ways. And it's just it's a whole world of opportunities, and can't
That's
recommend
awesome.
it enough.
So if folks want to get in touch with you to learn how to become a master networker, just like you are, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Email or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have email, text. We have our meetings, our weekly meetings. There's a weekly meeting. There's the TBD Connections website where you could see all of the chapters meetings. Ours is Wednesday mornings at 9. Kenny Bunk's is Tuesday mornings at 8:30, and there's chapters everywhere in between. You can stop by the bank. You can really, I'm always around.
Sounds great. Well, wonderful. Well, thanks everyone for listening this week. Again, don't forget, like, follow, share, rate, review everywhere, all the time, multiple times if you can. And otherwise, we will see you all next week. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Small Business, Big World. This podcast is a production of Paper Trails. We are a payroll and HR company based in Kennebunk, Maine, and we serve small and mid-sized businesses across New England and the country. If you found this podcast helpful, don't forget to follow us at Paper Trails Payroll across all social media platforms, and check us out at papertrails.com for more information. As a reminder, the views, opinions, and thoughts expressed are the hosts and guests alone. The material presented in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered legal or financial advice. By inviting this guest to our podcast, Paper Trails does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific individual, organization, product, or service.